Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So in this episode, we're going to pick our favorite imitators. We're choosing our top 5 cover songs that are better than the original. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome to the 3324 podcast. If you're new, we appreciate you checking us out. And if you're returning, welcome back. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We are also on social media, so follow us on Facebook or Instagram at 3324 podcast. See, that was good, right, Eric? That worked.
That's right.
We're asking,
Dean.
hey, how's it going, Eric? We're asking for help. Give us the follow on Instagram and Facebook. We appreciate it.
Yep.
So, yes, this is the 3324 podcast. I am Dean. You just heard from Eric, and we are going to guide you through one of our top 5 shows, which are always fun. These are one of the shows that we get to kind of stretch out and kind of relax and have a little fun with some of the subjects. So in this one, we are going to choose our top 5 cover songs that we think are better than the originals. And there are some caveats. We always have ground rules when we do these, just so it doesn't go off the rails. So the ground rule is that it cannot be a live version of a song, and the original song had to have been recorded by somebody, right? So it can't just be a song that somebody wrote and somebody else recorded and was a hit.
Yeah.
That's not really a cover per se.
Right.
And then with live, everybody does cover songs live. So it would be very easy to find a really great cover that's live. So what we're doing is we're challenging ourselves to find a great cover that was recorded and on an album, and then the original that was also recorded and released as well. Okay,
That's
right? Does that sound fair?
Yep. More than fair.
All right. So this was wow. There's a lot to choose from, and it depends on how you approach it, right?
Yeah, it is somewhat subjective. Let's put it that way.
It's very subjective.
It's very subjective.
But the direction you can go with this, it really, just by saying covers, it gives you a lot of latitude. Mm-hmm. And normally we've only done this in the very first episode. The ground rules also, we have another rule is Eric and I do not share our picks. So I do not know what he picked, and he does not know what I picked. In the first episode, the top 5 bass players, if you want to see a man get destroyed emotionally, you can check that out, because we did try. we did try and predict. And I've known Eric since the 7th grade, and likewise he knows me, right? But he got he guessed 4 out of my 5 picks, and I guessed 0 out of 5. So if you want to hear somebody get humiliated in front of a bunch of people, go check out the top 5 bass players.
So not my intent. Not my intent.
It was a personal humiliation. And so after
if anything, I'm the one who should be offended, because you obviously don't know me that well.
Yeah,
so
well, there you go. You can make the case.
But I wasn't.
Who the hell is this guy? I know him so well, and he doesn't know me. Is he paying attention to anything I say? Right? I mean,
I always prided myself on being a good listener. So there you
what?
go.
I didn't hear what you said.
I always prided myself on being a good listener. Yeah, okay.
See that? So what we did is we quickly scrapped like the whole prediction thing, because I
Yeah,
don't think I could take more. I don't think I could take more episodes of that. So,
more.
but we do have some. And you know what? At the end, I'll if I did get something or I did guess one, I'll certainly I'll let them know. But I don't. What do you think? A, do you think there's any crossover? And B, do
There
you
might
think
be.
you can predict?
I think I could probably predict at least 2.
Really? You know what?
You know,
All right, you're making a bold statement, and I think now it's time to show that you really don't know me.
okay,
I think it's going to be 0.
okay.
I think it's going to be 0, and I don't think I can even. I don't think I can predict yours because this is such a broad category.
It is.
I mean, you can go anywhere with this. It's
Right.
You know, and there's so much stuff that I'm probably not aware of that maybe is a cover that I'm not aware of, and that a couple of these on my list, I'll kind of tip my hand a little bit. A couple of these I wasn't aware until relatively very recently that they were covers.
That's right. Yes,
there's 2 on mine that I was like, I didn't even know, and it blew my mind.
I was talking to my sister today, and I was telling her about what we were doing. You know, we were recording this episode tonight, and I told her what the topic was, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's so great!" And you know, and she kept texting me throughout the day. I found this song. I had no idea that this was a cover, and I'm like, yeah. And check this one out, and check this one out, and check, you know, and so it's like, yeah.
It's. I think this is going to be a fun one. I don't want to build it up, but I think I'm going to surprise you.
I think. Well, I hope. I want to be surprised. You know, I think that's the point.
I want to be sedated.
We don't want to be too predictable. But on the other hand, I went about mine. I tried to pick one from each decade. I do. I like going back and doing. You know.
And for those that have listened to the other top 5s, I am in a constant battle to try and pin Eric down to make his number 1, to take make a statement that the number 1. And I, as always, I will make the statement that my number 1. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me, honestly. Okay. So I don't know if that's going to give it away, or maybe you're not sure where I'm coming from on it, but I think my number 1 is going to be it.
Yeah. Well, I have. My number 1 is not that, but it almost was.
So make it number 2. Make it number 2 then. Pick something else.
So I decided to put my previous number 1 as an honorable mention.
Wow.
Only because it might be very easy to predict.
Wow, that's going to be interesting.
Or I should say, it is undisputable. I wanted to choose something a little bit more interesting to talk about. Okay. So there you go.
I think I'm gonna. Well, we might be on the same wavelength, but I'm giving props to number 1. Number 1, I'm building. I'm really building this. I'm building it. Number 1, you cannot dispute that this is number 1. But you're kind of a decades guy, because when we did the top 5 bass players, you also did them in like age. You did them in age order and age range. So I'm getting to know you, that you like things not necessarily to like rate them 1 through 5, but you like to order them and put them in an order.
Yeah. I don't necessarily like to rate them, you know, so that's, you know, but yeah, I do like to go in some semblance of order. So because like you say, there's a wide spectrum of covers through the years. And,
so final question before we jump in.
Yeah.
Are you going from the early decades, older decades to now?
No,
I'm starting from now to backwards.
I'm starting with most recent
to backwards. Okay, so then let's do it. We are starting our number 5, our top 5 covers that are better than the original. So Eric, kick us off. Number 5.
Okay, my number 5 is "Heroes" by Peter Gabriel. His version. Now, make no mistake, it's very, very hard to top David Bowie. But I've been hearing this version quite a bit. And, not only recently, but just, I've heard it when the album came out. It came out in 2010 as an album called "Scratch My Back," which was an album of covers that he did of various artists. And a second volume of that album was made by some of the artists that he covered and doing his songs. So it was a nice little project that he put together. But when I heard this thing, man, I was floored. I think it's stunning. And I love David Bowie's. It's my favorite David Bowie song. And probably my favorite album by David Bowie was Heroes in '77. But I think what it is, it may not be necessarily better, but I think it's a different perspective. It puts you in a different mindset. It's sad. It's melancholy. It's the lush production on this thing, the strings. He does away with all his percussion, all the keyboards, all the things that Peter Gabriel to do, and he just used an orchestra with this thing, and that's it. And it's just him and his voice and this orchestra, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I just love it. It really brings tears to my eyes when I listen to it, and it was used actually to great effect. And I think it was season 3 of Stranger Things when I was watching it. It blew me away. I think you know what I'm talking about. The scene in the mall, and I think they played the song then, and it's like all the kids are standing together, and it really brought tears to my eyes. And I was watching it with my youngest son, and he was affected emotionally by it as well, which was even
that's powerful.
So, but as you may know, everybody out there, I'm a diehard Genesis fan, and Peter Gabriel, who's always been a diehard Bowie fan. He's a Bowie acolyte. So yeah, it's almost like it was meant to be that he would actually do this. And he didn't actually get David Bowie, unfortunately, to cover one of his songs. I would have liked to see, heard that, but it didn't happen. So, but yeah, that's my number 5.
Wow. I was trying to think how Genesis might fit in somewhere. Like no, only because they're known for doing their own songs. They're not known for covering. Right. So
yep.
So I'm surprised, but then not shocked that you were able to get that in there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great pick. Okay, so my number 5 is one of those songs that listening to it up until I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, did not know it was a cover, and it was written by a pretty big artist too. So it was like, how did I not know, or how do people not know? It's "Lotta Love" by Nicolette Larson. It came out in 1978, hit number 8 on the charts. It's from her debut album, Nicolette, written by Neil Young. So I went to go listen to his version of it, and you could not find 2 more different versions of something.
Yes.
His is very kind of Heart of Goldish or Old Man-ish, that just the guitar and strumming and singing it. And Nicolette Larson's version, and they both came out in the same year, actually. 1978, Neil Young's album Comes a Time came out. And Nicolette Larson sang on almost every song on Comes a Time, except for "Lotta Love" and one other song. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. She was like a kind of a backing singer. For those that don't know Nicolette Larson, she's very much in the Linda Ronstadt mold. She could, her career didn't take off the way Linda's did, and they actually sang some backing songs together, vocals on other albums too. She's in that zone. So if you check out her first album, she does the same thing, interpreting songs. But yeah, "Lotta Love's got that jazzy saxophone in the beginning, and it's just got a jazzy vibe, and then it's got a flute solo in the middle. So like, where are you going to get that? Always in love with the song and just her presentation of it. But then when I read that Neil Young wrote it, I'm like, oh my God, this guy wrote such a it just seemed very un-Neil Young to me. Especially because he wears so many different hats. Godfather of grunge and CSN and Buffalo's. He just does so many things that I shouldn't be surprised. But a lot of love, Nicolette Larson from 1978 was it. I mean, that's just we're kicking it off with no decade order, but she's the number 5.
Cool. I think what just to make a quick note, I think the one thing that they do have in common on this song is there is a sadness to it. Even her version, I think there's I don't know why, but it always makes me, there's a little bit of heartache in that, in her vocal, and it just it kind of always affected me that way. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's maybe just the melody itself or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's but
it's definitely a song of longing and wanting and it's kind of hopeful But basically, yeah, it's gonna take
Oddly
a lot of love.
Oddly enough, it always reminded me of the girls we went to school with.
Okay, the girls that we went to school with.
Well, and one girl in particular who unfortunately is no longer with us. She died very young. Yeah, every time I hear the song, I think of her. I don't know why. It just, there's just that melancholy to it. Not to get too personal here. I'm going to back off now. Let's move on.
Moving on. So that was, and so yours was 2010.
Yes,
was your number 5. So
that's right.
What decade?
Okay, this is from 1996, and this is you're going to be surprised with this one. It's "Killing Me Softly" by the Fugees with Lauryn Hill on lead vocals there. This was originally recorded by Roberta Flack in 1973. I always liked, I mean, her vocal, she's very respectful. I think she's very honoring Roberta Flack because she sounds very similar,
very close.
Very close. So, but I just love the hip hop beat. It's catchy. It's still emotional, but there's still that, that sadness to it. Yeah, I always loved it. It's just one of those songs where you just kind of lay back and you're just, nodding your head up and down, and it's not saying anything. It's just a straight up love song, or loss of love and that kind of thing. So whole album I thought was great at the time.
Yeah, the Fugees were big when this came out. It just exploded them, and then Lauryn Hill, obviously.
Yeah, the score. Yeah, but also, I used to go to karaoke a lot, and then of course this was like one of the top 10 karaoke songs that people would do, and every single time we went, the song was done. So there's a lot of that attached to it as well. So there's some nice memories there of the song. But that's and there's quite a few of songs from the 90s that I wanted to pick, but I just thought about what used to make me, every time I heard it made me feel good, and that I do like better than the original. And it was as I came to this on the top of my head. So there it is. That's my
that's a great pick, because you're right. She does. I don't think she's trying to imitate Roberta Flack, because if you hear her other stuff, she's got a similar tone in her voice.
Yeah.
So by covering this, it made it accessible to older people that remember it, but brought it and updated the sound, with the Fugees to make it accessible for younger people and bring it to them. And oh my God, that thing was gigantic, that song.
Yeah. Yep. And it's just that,
that's a great choice. I totally, I totally forgot about that one. Alrighty, we're moving on. We're rolling through this, so we will probably be able to get to honorable mentions, I suppose. Yeah. My number 4 is from 1985. I bought this album. I bought this album when it first came out. But oddly enough, I was not a big fan of this person, but. All it takes is for me to see something on MTV or to catch a song, and that's what did it. But this song I'm going to talk about was not that song. It was this is Joe Walsh from his Confessor album. The song is Rosewood Bitters.
Okay.
And this was another one that I didn't realize he didn't write. This was the song I was listening to before we came on. I listened to it twice in a row because I love this thing. It's just so, oh my God, the guitar is just so heavy on it. It's so thick. It's got some synth on it also. So it's a little 80s ish, but not really, because Joe Walsh, is going to be Joe Walsh no matter what decade he's in. But yeah, so it's from his album, The Confessor. This was like a year or two ago when I discovered that this was not an original by him. It was by Michael Stanley. And he had a group called the Michael Stanley Band. Michael Stanley's debut album came out in 1973, and Rosewood Bitters was on it, and Joe Walsh played on the original. So that's where it came from. 12 years later, he would be adapting it. Now, if you listen to the Michael Stanley version, it's definitely lighter, but there's a lot more lyrics too. This song had a lot more to it. Joe Walsh kind of took it and trimmed away a lot of the lyrics, just in, I guess, trading off for more of a feel, and his guitar work in this. And I just, oh my God, I just love this fat, heavy guitar sound he gets. But this is really an accessible pop song. So it's not a hard rock song, but just what Joe Walsh is able to do with it totally made it his own. I was like, yeah, I just thought that he wrote this, or that it was not originally done. And Michael Stanley actually passed away, I believe, last year. And he was kind of not a big name, but well known in the area of the country where he was. I think it was in the north, like Chicago or Detroit area. I think, I could be wrong. So he's kind of like a locally known and well respected. But then Joe Walsh kind of took this and put it on The Confessor, which made The Confessor just that much of a better album. Love it.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Very
Am I
good
surprised?
choice.
Am I surprising you?
Yeah, that was a surprise. I had no idea that was a cover.
Boom.
So,
dropping
boom.
dropping bombs on you from Rosewood Bitters from Joe Walsh. So
Cool.
now number 3. So let me see. You did 2010, 96. So it's got to be the 80s.
Yep, 83.
83.
83. And this is fair. I mean, this is really well known.
Really?
Right out the gate. So
I'm not picking up any hints from that. So go for it. Number 3.
Okay. So Always Something There to Remind Me, Naked Eyes.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Written by Burt Bacharach back in the day, Mr. Bacharach. He actually recorded it himself. Yeah, this was their number 1 hit, and I don't think you could have grown up in the 80s without liking this song. I don't care who you are, what you listen to, pop perfection. At the time, it was just really, really catchy, really light and bubbly, and just it really infectious, and it just outright, it just gets you every time. They also, I always thought, now here's an interesting tidbit. Their second single, Promises, Promises, off the same, this is the album Burning Bridges, I thought was also written by Burt Bacharach, but it's not. It's not the same song. He did write a song called Promises, Promises, and he did put it in the same, I guess he was writing for some kind of show, like I think a Broadway show or something to that effect. And Always Something There to Remind Me was in the same show, but he also wrote a song called Promises, but it's not the same song. It was written by the members of the band. So I don't know if that's maybe their way of maybe paying tribute to Burt Bacharach by naming the song Promises, Promises. I have no idea. But that I found that pretty interesting, because I always thought that Promises, Promises was also another Bacharach tune, but which I actually like even more than this song, actually. And it's like, when I was talking to my sister today, that's one of her favorite songs too. So we were kind of, talking about that.
Yeah. But I didn't know that was a cover until much later also.
Yeah. Neither did I. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're not thinking about, especially in the 80s, because the music was so different that I don't know if you'd be able to pick up that it was a cover, but you just weren't expecting that those artists were influenced by that or looking back that far, right? Was that in the 60s when the Bacharach version came out?
Yeah, so it was like late 60s, maybe 60, maybe 67, 66, 67. Yeah.
And that song, Always Something There to Remind Me, that, the cover is totally 80s. I mean, it's got all the 80s,
absolutely.
all the 80s tricks in it. So you don't think that it's going to be a cover, unlike the Fugees, which is really kind of, that really sounds close to the original when you compare. Right? It sounds like an homage as opposed to Always Something There to Remind Me, which
that was one of my,
make it their own.
That's another way I approached this, was trying to find a cover that was different in the arrangement, instead of not just being a straight up adaptation of the original, but But interestingly enough, there's a lot of covers in the 80s. I think it might be, and this was a really big decade for covers. I mean, did you know that, for example, Girls Just Want to Have Fun was a cover?
Not at the time, no.
I had no idea. I just found that out today.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was a cover.
Well, I mean, I knew it maybe relatively recent, but yeah, at the time, no. I didn't know. It was kind of like, Cyndi Lauper. It's like, because they make these songs their own and they become so identified with it, right? That you just think, that's hers.
And I love rock and roll. I didn't know that was a cover either. I just found that out.
When you're doing the research and you're trying to find things, you actually end up learning a lot more, and you say, "Oh my God, I didn't know that," or "I didn't know." Yeah, it's pretty neat, and that's a good one though. Always Something There to Remind Me, because it's so 80s that they fool you, and they really punch it up, and they don't make it try and sound traditional.
That's like a staple, I think. Like when I think nostalgic for the 80s, that's one of the probably top 5 songs that I'm thinking about when I think of the 80s, so
that and Safety Dance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Men Without Hats.
That's right.
Well, my number 3 is, I'm going to double dip. I would want this one to be number 1, but it can't, because the number 1 is the number 1, but if I was just making my own order, this would be number one. And it's You're No Good by Linda Ronstadt from 1974, Heart Like a Wheel. Linda Ronstadt is one of the most amazing vocalists ever to set foot on this planet, bar none. She is absolutely, that's her stock and trade, is she's not a songwriter. She sings other people's songs and she makes them her own. And a lot of the stuff when I was growing up in the 70s, her versions of cover songs were the ones that I was introduced to and did not know that they were covers. Like That'll Be the Day by Buddy Holly. When I was a kid, I heard the Ronstadt version.
Yeah.
Actually, Love is a Rose, I think, was written by Neil Young as well. So her version of Tracks of My Tears, oh my God, just absolutely off the charts. Blue by You. I mean, she knows she's done so many, but You're No Good is just her really ripping. In 1974, really just ripping through this. The original, because we need to acknowledge that, so I'm in compliance, was by Dee Dee Warwick in 1963. That's Dionne Warwick's sister.
Oh, wow.
So she recorded it, and it sounds of its time. But Ronstadt just brings the fire. You know, she's got that, like Ronstadt has that, she's got such a great vocal range that she can do the growly stuff, and then she could soar with the best of them. So Ronstadt is just like amazing. The one I'm going to tack on to it is Van Halen. They did You're No Good in 1979 on Van Halen too. And they totally took the song and made it, and Van Halenized it, right? They made it their own as well. And much like Always Something There to Remind Me, right? You would not know because of they adapted it so well to their sound, right? They plugged it right in and made it something unique. So you can listen to the Ronstadt and the Van Halen side by side and not know for a while that you're listening to the same song.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Very good choice.
Surprising you, right? See, I'm coming out of left field with these.
Well, okay.
That's why we don't share.
That's right.
So You're No Good. So, though I'll give you a hint. No, I'm not going to give you a hint. How would it? You're not getting a hint. No hint for you.
Okay.
I was going to give you, but I think it'll give it away. So I'm not going to. So number two.
My number
has
two
got to be from the 70s because that's the way we're going. So lay it on us.
1976, Blinded by the Light, Manfred Mann's Earth Band.
Wow.
Written by Bruce Springsteen. Again, one of those songs that I heard this version first, had no idea Springsteen wrote it. And it doesn't feel like a Bruce Springsteen song. Like I had, to this day, I don't even know what the song's about. You know, I cannot make any kind of sense of these lyrics whatsoever. It's really not the kind of song that's, you know Springsteen to write. Yeah. But it was adapted into this sort of prog rock thing. Yeah. And they took it to a whole new level, and it's wild. It's again, very catchy, very, and it fits. I think their version of it is the definitive version. I mean, Springsteen's, Springsteen fans out there will probably disagree, but it doesn't even come close to this thing. I mean, it's so iconic of the 70s and it's been heard in many, many movies, and it's from the album The Roaring Silence, and it was released in 1976, and 76 was a really good year, I think, for this kind of thing, for this kind of music. But yeah, that's my number two. That was like the first, when we talked about doing this episode, this was like weeks ago. I think we conceived of it. That was like my number one, like not necessarily my number one pick, but it was the first song I thought.
First thing that jumped.
The first thing that came, and I never left the list. So there it is.
Yeah, it's an epic song. I mean,
really is. Yeah,
it's got so much to it. I don't think anybody realized. You know what? Back then, Springsteen wasn't as big as he was. Right? He wouldn't get gigantic until like Hungry. I mean, he was big on FM radio, but they certainly weren't playing Blinded by the Light, his version. They would play the Manfred Mann version. When I finally got around to listening to the Springsteen version, his delivery of it is in the Springsteen mold of its time, where it was kind of like Rosalita, like that storytelling delivery, and Manfred Mann doesn't do it like that.
No,
theirs is more of like this like really just this epic piece with different movement.
lots of keyboards,
I
lots
agree.
of synths. Yeah, it's very, very prog, but pop at the
Yeah,
same
no,
time.
I agree. That's
Yeah.
the version. That's the version. Just like A Lot of Love, right? It's like that's the version. You
Mhm.
did, the other one was there, but yeah. All right.
So there it
that's
is.
Manfred Mann's Earthband. That's a good choice. I mean, and that's still a staple of rock radio. And you don't really hear the Springsteen one. You could definitely go check it out. We should maybe do a playlist of these, or we'll put it in the show notes. The choices, the original and the cover. I'll put that in the show notes for each one of us. That'll be neat.
Cool.
This way people can go research it. So my number 2, oh boy, how could I not have Elvis Presley on my list when we're talking about artists that interpret songs masterfully? And this is, and I didn't realize that this was a cover. See, I mean, with Presley, I'm building it up. With Presley, he doesn't write songs either, right? Like Linda Ronstadt. So he's really adept at finding songs. But I didn't realize that this song was actually recorded once before, and this is "Suspicious Minds" from 1969, and this actually hit number 1.
Very good choice.
The original artist was Michael James, and he wrote it. He released it as a single in 1968, and it went nowhere. And he had written some other stuff. He had actually wrote quite a few songs that Elvis would record. Also, he wrote He co-wrote "Moody Blue," which was one of Elvis's last songs before he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So Elvis heard this single and said, "You know what? I could make something of this." And in 1969, Elvis was hot off the heels of his 68 comeback special. If you ever see pictures or music videos or videos of Elvis where he's wearing all the black leather and he's sitting around, that was his comeback special. That was his attempt at kind of rehabbing his image, because in the 60s, he had spent so much time making these throwaway movies. Elvis made like 30 films in his life, and that's in a span of like 12 or 13 years, because he was just cranking those things out and contractually obligated. He finally got free of that. And that's when he started touring more, and the Vegas residencies and all that stuff started. So Suspicious Minds was everybody reacquainting themselves with Elvis as a mature singer. And that's one of the things I love about this song and this era is I'm a fan of like the later Elvis voice.
Mm-hmm.
Not when he was younger, he had that just that really delicate, love me tender voice, and he could really sing kind of an angelic, for lack of a better term. When he got older, his voice really got more powerful and it got heavier. It got thicker.
Mm-hmm.
And Suspicious Minds, you hear that. That's a mature man singing this song. And I love his vocals, his vocal sound from 69 up until he died. He never really lost his voice. As horrible as his physical appearance got, he was one of those people that never lost their voice. He could still like blast. And Suspicious Minds was kind of relaunching him into the public consciousness, because then a couple of years later, in 72, he would hit again with Burning Love.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two songs really kind of encapsulate Elvis in the 70s, because then after that he did all of his crazy touring, Aloha from Hawaii.
So you like you like the Vegas years.
I like oh yeah.
With the white suit.
Yes, absolutely. Only because if you ever watch the Aloha from Hawaii concert, I highly recommend anybody who thinks Elvis is a joke or has become a punchline, watch Aloha from Hawaii. And he's wearing the gaudy outfit, but he could get away with he could sell
at that
it.
point he could do anything.
But you listen to songs like you Gave Me a Mountain, and oh my God, this guy could just rip. This was Elvis in his zone for me, was 1969. So Suspicious Minds, number 2.
Cool. Really good choice.
Okay, so number 1, it's not going to be difficult to say that this is from the 60s, because we're going in decades.
Well,
or is it from the 70s but earlier?
It's early 70s.
Okay,
it's 1970. So.
1970 on the dot.
Yes.
And this is your number 1, but not, I need to clarify, you're not saying this is the number 1. It's just happens to be number 1 on your list.
It's number 1 on my list, but I had something else in its place. But I decided to use this instead.
All right.
And I'll tell you why.
Let's have it.
And it's Little Wing by Derek and the Dominoes. It was a Jimi Hendrix song. This was from Layla and other assorted love songs, which I consider to be probably a bold statement. I think it's the finest guitar rock album of all time.
Ooh.
Hands down. I'm gonna stick to that, So this particular version of the song, I think, has been covered. This arrangement of the song has been widely covered by everyone after. Nobody does Hendrix' version of it. Not even Stevie Ray Vaughan, I think, did his version, because Hendrix's version was pretty low key. It was off of his Axis Bold of Love album, and it wasn't like what this thing was, like sort of an anthem. Like Duane Allman built it to be sort of like this real reverent kind of thing, and it's like the guitars in this are just, they reach into the stratosphere, and it's just again very stunning. Hendrix's version is this pretty low, loose thing, and he's more experimenting about the tone of his guitar, going through the channels, and then he's just, whatever. And it's just his vocal is not really, so it's pretty underwhelming, actually, but their version for Hendrix. Yeah. And that's, for their version, they, this was like the very end of the recording process for them. They had just finished recording the song Layla, and that was supposed to be it. And Eric Clapton was asking Duane Allman, say, do you want to do anything else? So, hey, how about Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix? So they came up with this arrangement and just took it to a whole new, different level. And it's been my favorite when you consider that this is maybe 2 songs away from the title track of that album, and everything that comes before it. It's just amazing. People like Sting have done it. He's covered it. People like the Corrs, the Irish band, the Corrs, they've done it this way, in a much more poppy sense, but at the same arrangement, the same melody, but their version, hands down, I think it's much better than Hendrix. Now, what do you think was supposed to take its place there? Obviously, which I consider to be probably the. Well, let's do your number one first.
Okay. Oh, so I see what you're doing. You were asking me what I thought what was going to be there.
Now, what do you think was there in the first place? Interestingly enough, okay.
Interestingly enough, which means it's somewhat associated then, or then I got no clue. So save it.
I'll save it.
Save it for the honorable mentions. I'll just throw out a quick guess.
Okay.
Black Magic Woman?
No.
Okay. All right, that's fine. That's an honorable mention, though, because that's the same era. Anyway, okay, all right. So number 1, I'm going to stand on this. I'm putting Eric just put Little Wing into the ring. My number 1 is going to go toe to toe with it, and I don't think you're going to guess. Do you want to try and guess?
Roll Over Beethoven?
No,
not ELO.
Close. Nope. Nah,
really?
Nah, never. I don't think that's better than the original. No.
Really?
Yeah, really. You thought that was going to be it?
Yeah.
See how easily swayed you are.
Wow, that's
no. What I'm about to lay down that is not the greatest cover of all time.
So you think this is the greatest cover of all time?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And again, it's got nothing to do with whether or not I like the song. So this is what I think is the greatest cover of all time.
Okay.
It's not a song I listen to per se, but we have to respect like this song's got to get its due. I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Oh,
is probably the greatest cover ever done. What she did for that song and to that song was nothing short of amazing. It caught Whitney Houston at the height of her powers. In 92, this was from the soundtrack to The Bodyguard, originally written by Dolly Parton in 1973, spent 14 weeks at number 1. I mean, everybody knows that part where the song stops and then she just starts singing, and she just goes for it. It's just a great cover. I can't, this is it. This has to be it. This has to be the greatest cover. I'm sorry. It's got over 1 billion plays on YouTube. 1 billion with a B on YouTube. Okay, so that should tell you right there. There's very few videos that have over 1 billion plays, and I Will Always Love You.
I'm not going to dispute it.
Yeah.
because I it is,
Yeah.
but
And Dolly Parton made a cool $10 million off of her version.
Mm.
And no one, and you know what the funny thing is Linda Ronstadt had covered it. It's been covered throughout the years, but no one ever paid attention to it. Right.
Yeah.
So that it's got to speak. And actually Elvis wanted to cover it. Elvis's like standard contract is he gets half of the songwriting royalties as well. And Dolly Parton declined. She didn't want to sign that over.
Oh,
and she was
okay.
heartbroken. She goes, I can't believe I have to say no to Elvis. But she wasn't going to give up her song like that, like give up the publishing royalties to it. And good on her, because
good for her. Yeah,
the ship would come in, almost 20 years later,
sure,
with Whitney Houston, and Whitney Houston just blasted this song into the stratosphere. I mean, that's all that was playing in '92. You couldn't. The movie didn't do a lot, and if whatever the movie did was probably because of the song and the soundtrack, because the soundtrack was no slouch. She had a lot of good songs on there, Queen of the Night, and I remember listening to that back in the day. But
very surprised. I'm very surprised.
This old dog's got some tricks.
I'm shocked that you don't think that ELO's version of Roll Over Beethoven is better than the original.
No, I don't think
I am absolutely shocked by that.
See that?
Wow. That's,
Now I'm making up for the 4 out of 5.
Well, that's right. This is
the Return of the Jedi of this is our third one. So this is me like stumping you that you thought you were going to be able to predict that.
Well, there you go.
There is an ELO in the honorable mention list, but it's not Roll Over Beethoven. I don't think that's the best. It's not one of my favorite ELO songs. It's not one of my favorites when it comes down to listening to. So no. So yeah. So just roll down your 5 to 1 again, just quick. What were they from 5 to 1?
Okay, Heroes by Peter Gabriel, originally done by David Bowie. Killing Me Softly, The Fugees, originally recorded by Roberta Flack. Always Something There to Remind Me, Naked Eyes, originally done by Burt Bacharach. Blinded by the Light, Manfred Mann's Earth Band, originally done by Bruce Springsteen. Little Wing, Derek and the Dominoes, originally done by Jimi Hendrix.
Cool. And mine were A Lot of Love by Nicolette Larson, original artist Neil Young. Rosewood Bitters by Joe Walsh, original artist Michael Stanley Band or Michael Stanley. You're No Good. I'm not saying that to you. I'm just saying that's the name of the song by Linda Ronstadt. And then the original artist was Dee Dee Warwick. Number 2 was Suspicious Minds by Elvis Presley, originally released by Michael James. Mm-hmm. And then the number 1, I Will Always Love You by the incomparable Whitney Houston and written by the incomparable Dolly Parton.
Yeah. That's great. That's really, really, it's a really good choice, actually. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and if you notice my order, because there's a lot of women.
Yeah.
And I knew Whitney Houston was going to be number 1. So then after that, I just kind of staggered it. So it's girl, guy, girl, guy, girl.
Nice.
Yeah. A lot of I mean, Ronstadt was a shoo-in. I mean, there was no doubt that she was going to have that, there wasn't any way she wasn't going to be on my list. So honorable mention, who came off the list very recently, Until You Come Back to Me by Aretha Franklin. Originally recorded and written by Stevie Wonder.
Oh, wow.
In 1967, but he didn't actually release. He recorded it in 67, didn't release it on an album until 77. But I love Until You Come Back to Me. Such a great vocal by Aretha Franklin. What do you have? What's one you have?
One that I have is, this is what I consider to be the best cover of all time.
This was it. This was the one.
And that's All Along the Watchtower.
Okay.
By Hendrix.
Yep. Originally
absolute. It's not only, but originally it was really by Bob Dylan. Again, one of those instances where Bob Dylan's version was nothing like what Hendrix did to it.
Yeah.
And, the combination of both, even Dylan concedes that his is the better version. He just took it to, God, Yeah. But I thought it was more, for me, that seems to be the undisputed one for me, at least. I mean, because it's not only what I consider to be the greatest, but also one of my favorite songs of all time.
Really?
Just period. Yeah.
Wow.
I could put that maybe in a top 10 list or, whatever. So I just love the song, but I thought it would be more interesting to talk about the Dominoes version because it's just so different. And again, it's the same kind of thing where they did like a whole different arrangement to it. And, so it's honoring two great guitar players, honoring Jimi Hendrix. So I kind of wanted to, because there's really not much else to say about Watchtower that hasn't already been said. So,
No,
so
that's a good choice. That's a good choice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had for another honorable mention, since we were going the ELO route. This was it was cheating though. I didn't want to put it on because it's cheating.
Why?
Do You?
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this.
So the song "Do You" from A New World Record from 1976 is done by ELO, and everybody knows that version. It's very popular, but it was actually done by a group called The Move, 60s English psychedelic pop band. But the cheating part is Jeff Lynne was in The Move, and they recorded it there, and then he actually recovered his own song, and he actually did do it better. The newer version of "Do You" is better. Yeah. So that I thought, you know what, that's kind of cheating. That's like,
I don't know. I mean, well, here's okay.
He covered his own song, so it's kind of like, all right, he took another swing at it.
Okay, I have another.
Good.
And you might think this is cheating too, because you said no live versions.
Yes, I did.
However,
we said,
however, there is a studio version of it, and it's "Young Man Blues" by The Who. And they made this thing iconic. It was written by a guy named Mose Allison way back in, I think it was the late 50s. And his version is it's jazzy. It's like he's like a jazz pianist, and it's very, very tinny, sort of very, very kind of almost laid back. The Who kind of just rocked it out. Now you could argue that, okay, it's not supposed to be live, but live it leads by itself, really put The Who on the map.
So you're going with a live one then?
I'd prefer the live version, but they did record it in the studio, and it's on the Odds and Sons album.
Technicality. So, you're saying that if you were going to go with a live song, this would be it?
That would be it. Their version of the song is just. You talk about the punk sensibility and just really plugging in and just loud and just taking it to again another level. But yeah. But there's my cheat. But it's not on the list.
I'll throw a live one out there too. Then I wasn't prepared, but you could. I may get flack for this, but all right.
Just do it. Just say it.
Just say it. Say it. I really like. You could almost pick anything from this concert too, so that might give it away. From the Concert for George.
Okay.
There are so many great performances in there.
Oh yeah.
But this is a hometown favorite, but Jeff Lynne's version of "Give Me Love" and the arrangement, I just love how he handled the vocal for that. And I just love Clapton's playing on it. I just love it. I love how he handled it. And it's live, but it almost sounds like it's not, because it's just so well produced, obviously too, because they just, Jeff Lynne spends a ton of time on that.
I'll go even further. I think every version of the songs.
I was going to say that you could just say "Concert for George" and you'd cover
Concert for George. Every song on there is quite possibly maybe better than the original.
Yeah,
I like Clapton's version of
Horse to Water. I mean,
Beware of Darkness. I love his Clapton's version. Much better than George's. Like I love All Things Must Pass, but. But they, the way they did these songs with the orchestra and everything, it was just the whole concert is just.
I don't think Petty's version of Taxman was better though. His was a little rough. But overall, you could say put on Concert for George, and you'll hear cover songs like bar none. Like all of them were done expertly. Even McCartney at the end with the ukulele, and he does something, and just that's a whole other show. Do you have a very obscure one in your honorable mention that maybe no one's ever heard of that you can turn somebody on?
Maybe I do. Maybe we'll do that one. Wonderwall by Ryan Adams. He did a cover of the Oasis. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it. I love it. It's very slow. It's just the haunting vocal. It's like the whispery kind of vocal. And I like it much better than Oasis's version.
Wow. I have two obscures.
Okay.
These are very obscure. You might remember. You'll remember. Hopefully, you'll remember both, but one in particular, I hope you remember. So I'll save that. The first one is a cover of the song "Funky Town" from the '70s by Lips Inc. There was an Australian group called Pseudo Echo, and in the '80s, kind of like always something there to remind me. They '80s up Funky Town
Yeah.
with the, you know, the keyboards and the synthesizers, and it sounds nothing like that one. But
Mhm.
do you remember this? I had it on cassette, and I guarantee you must have heard it. Group called Laszlo Bane, and they did a version of Overkill by Men at Work.
No.
And the great thing about it, it's kind of like 90s punk pop, alt pop type thing.
Yeah.
So they kind of do it that way. But in that second part of the song where Colin Hay's like, I can't get to sleep, right? That part, he actually sings it. They got Colin Hay to sing that part on the song.
Really?
So you're listening.
That's wild.
Yeah, so you're listening to this cover of Overkill, which is a great song and a very curious choice. And then Colin Hay comes in at the end and sings that whole part at the end, which is just a great, you know. And this was in the 90s, but he still had a great, like, he delivers. So look up Laszlo Bane is the name of the group. They didn't do anything after this. This was it. But I was obsessed with their version of Overkill just because it had Colin Hay from, you know, the lead singer from Men at Work in it.
That's wild.
Yeah, so they got him to do it, which was kind of neat. It was kind of, well, I guess Australian, you know, he's gonna you know, help out some people from his own country, right? Nothing wrong with that. So wow, that was fast and furious, and it's interesting when I was thinking about this, right? Because I was trying to figure out what is it going to be, what should I pick, and I just went with it. You know, I was just thinking, what do I listen to that I like?
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't trying to go too hard, too deep and too hard into outsmarting anything. It's kind of like, I've always loved A Lot of Love. I've always loved You're No Good and Rosewood Bitters. I mean, these are like easy things for me. The education was, some of them I didn't realize were covers.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the thing is up until relatively recently, I was like, you know, and that's a great thing when an artist can fool you and make it, you know, which is different than someone writing a song, you know, professional songwriters, and then they give somebody a song. But these are the artists hearing this song elsewhere and then saying, you know, I'm going to take a crack at it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with, and I don't think you find two different ones than Nicolette Larson and Neil Young. Those, I think that's my biggest contrast one for out of my list, is if you listen to Neil Young and the Nicolette Larson, A Lot of Love.
I wonder what goes through the artist's mind. I mean, do you think that they intend to make it better than the original? You know, you always hear like they're so humble. They tried to be humble and say, well, you know, it wasn't our intent to make it, you know, to necessarily, I just want to do it justice. But
I think it's subjective, right?
But do you really think that, you know, some of the, you know, they know that they're doing something better? Did you think that ever happened?
That's a good question. It's a good question, because there are people that are going to be purists, right? And always, no matter what, say the original, no matter what, is what the intent was, right? And it's especially something like Always Something There to Remind Me, right? Like for me, the remake, the 80s version, is my version.
Yeah.
Right. That's my version. That's the one I know. It's not like I knew both and was able to pick. Like, I didn't realize until much later that was a cover, right? So much like Rosewood Bitters, that's my version because I didn't know there was a version before. You know,
yeah,
so
I had no idea that was a cover.
Yeah. So I guess it's all subjective. Now, if you were a Michael Stanley fan and then you see that there's Rosewood Bitters, you might not like it because Joe Walsh cut out a ton of lyrics and kind of changed the song. It was a lot longer as far as the storytelling and the lyrics of it. And Joe Walsh took it and turned it around. And just like Little Wing, you know, they're taking it and making it their own. And oftentimes it then becomes something else.
Yeah,
so
that's kind of reminds me of like Bob Welch's version of Sentimental Lady, where he cuts out an entire verse of the song. I'm always looking for that other verse because I love, you know, from Bare Trees, I love the original Fleetwood Mac version. So
I like I like the slicker produced version.
That's because Lindsay's producing it.
No, I just think he gets. I think taking out that verse kind of makes the song a little tighter, a little punchier, and the new production doesn't hurt just because it's got a fuller production to it. It's fuller sound because you got the guitar, you got the acoustic guitar in the back, and then you've got the electric over it. So that's one of those instances of an artist recovering themselves, right? And take it like ELO did with Do You, taking another swing at it.
Yep.
which
Yep.
is different than re-recording, because the thing now, one of the new gimmicks with bands is going back and re-recording their old stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm to varying degrees of success. Taylor Swift just most recently did that. She had to recover her albums because when she was young, she signed a really horrible deal and didn't own the rights to the recordings of her first album. So she just literally put out another album. She just released her very first album. She had to recut everything and redo it. Squeeze did the same thing.
Yeah.
Squeeze did an album called Spot the Difference. And they did pretty, and their intent though was to make these as exact as possible. And they came pretty darn close, even so many years later. If you listen to the version of Tempted with Paul Carrack, I was like, wow, Paul Carrack sounded like, did they take the old vocal? He sounded really good. Yeah. Jeff Lynne did it with his ELO stuff. He recorded a greatest hits album, but then re-recorded them. And no, I don't think it's, I'll say no, the originals are better in those cases, but I don't know what the reasons are for sometimes for artists to revisit their catalog and re-record it.
What do you think about McCartney's latest? About they just re-released the album with other artists.
Other people do it. Yeah, no, I love that.
That was interesting.
Yeah, his McCartney 3 comes out like last year, and to much fanfare, and then he go ahead. They re-released the album, but with just and St. Vincent is on it, and she's got a new album coming out, and he just gave it to like current artists and let them reinterpret it, which is fun. That's nice. That's kind of neat. It's a nice companion piece to see what other people, what their spin on it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like it.
Kind of neat.
I like it as well.
It's kind of like a tribute album, but before the album had time to get old.
Really get on. Right, yeah.
He comes out with the album, and then an album of people covering it. Like that's like only McCartney could get away with that.
Maybe
right?
He knows something we don't.
Well he's McCartney, so he's the only guy that's going to be able to ever get away with releasing an album.
Of course.
And saying, hey, do you guys want to do covers?
Yeah.
Who's going to say no? Right? No one's going to say no. They'll all be in on it. So he's probably the only person that could get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's actually, I didn't listen to that though. I haven't heard anything from from McCartney 3 or the covers. But yeah, it's got a pretty decent guest list. And yeah, and I didn't even go into some Zeppelin. There was an album called Encomium in the 90s. And it was all Zeppelin covers. And there was a lot of great stuff on there, and I didn't even touch that. Cracker was on there, and Stone Temple Pilots with their version of Dancing Days. But I don't think those are better. They're different.
No, they were. The 90s seemed to have that. There was a lot of like what they call tribute records too.
They did one to the Doors, and Fleetwood Mac had one.
There was one that I had. There was a Curtis Mayfield one, and they had people like Clapton on there, and Steve Winwood, and Phil Collins, and Bruce Springsteen, and just a bunch of other people. And I actually like some of the versions of those songs, though, the way they interpret them, better than what Curtis Mayfield did back in the day, only because of the production. Curtis Mayfield had a great voice, but the production standards at the time with some of the arrangements of these songs weren't as strong. Yeah. So when these other artists did them, they really fleshed it out. So, but at Hendrix, I think there was maybe like 2 or 3 different tribute albums to him.
Tributes to the Beatles, that kind of tributes to Buddy Holly.
Yeah,
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm glad I didn't even try, and that would have been easy to go to. Right? Actually, I didn't even think about it. I mean, there's so many Beatles tribute albums.
I thought about it, but I was like, nah, this is not, because I don't think they're better necessarily. There's just,
exactly. I went with stuff that I like I said that I listened to.
Same with me. Yeah, these are songs that I genuinely like, and that have been part of my life. So I think about that too, like personal memories and that kind of thing. So
cool. I'm if we continue to do top fives. Mm-hmm. I'm committed to getting you to commit to a number one. I just have to find the right subject. I need to find the right subject matter that you'll say, oh, this is the number one of everything.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just, maybe I don't know why I'm weird that way.
Maybe if we do the top 5 Star Wars films.
It's hard to pick a number one. It really is. It really is, because there's just so much good stuff out there.
You know what? I'm going to get you a dartboard. I'm going to get you a dartboard, and you could just throw darts and
leave it to
throw
chance. Completely random.
You throw 5 darts, and whatever the last dart is, that's number 1, and then you stand by.
Well, there you go.
So that's going to do it for our top 5 covers that we feel were better than the originals. We would like to know what your favorite covers are, or if you disagree with any of ours, but I certainly would like to hear some other choices and selections that you think are a cover that's better. And there's a lot to choose from. So we by no means didn't even come close to scratching the surface of this. So there's a lot of ground there. So by all means, share with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at 3324 Podcast. Let us know what your favorite covers are. And as always, we thank you for your support. It means the world to us, and we are humbled and grateful. And for Eric, my name is Dean. This has been the 3324 Podcast, and we will see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 Podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 Podcast and on Twitter at 3324P to join the conversation.